The planet Velora was a world of strange beauty and danger. Its skies were painted with swirling colors, shades of violet and crimson mixing with streaks of gold as the suns hovered above the horizon. The land, however, told a story far different from its skies. Twisted metal and shattered buildings littered the surface. Smoke rose from broken factories and fallen towers, curling into the sky like dark fingers. The planet had once been full of life and laughter, but now it seemed abandoned and silent. Liara, a young alien girl no older than 12 cycles, crawled through the ruins. Her body was battered and bruised, her legs weak and trembling. Her skin, a soft shade of lavender, was streaked with dirt and dried blood. Her bright eyes, which once sparkled with curiosity and joy, now reflected fear and pain. She tried to move quickly, but each step sent waves of agony through her body. The creatures that had attacked her home had left her alone, assuming she could not survive. She paused for a moment, leaning against a broken wall. Her breaths were shallow and ragged, each one a struggle. The wind cut through her thin clothes, carrying with it the acrid smell of smoke and chemicals. She shivered, wrapping her small arms around herself. She whispered to the empty streets, words she had repeated many times since the attack. They left me. Everyone left me. Her voice was small, barely more than a whisper, but it carried the weight of loneliness and despair. She thought of her family, her friends, and her home all gone in an instant. The attack had been swift and merciless. She had seen her world fall apart around her, heard the screams of those she loved, and now she was alone. Yet, despite her pain and fear, Liara refused to give up. A spark of determination burned within her, small but unwavering. She remembered the stories her mother had told her about the survivors of Velora, about courage and hope. Her mother had said, even when all seems lost, life finds a way. Liara clung to those words as she dragged herself forward. She needed to find shelter. The ruins offered little protection, but she had no choice. She spotted the remains of a building that had once been a research center. Its walls were broken, windows shattered, but it was intact enough to offer some cover. Crawling slowly, Liara made her way to the entrance. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and the scent of decay. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay hidden. Her mind raced with thoughts of danger. The creatures that had attacked her home could return at any moment. She did not know if they would hunt her or simply leave her to die. But she could not risk being caught. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, listening for any sound that might indicate movement. For hours, she stayed there, trembling and exhausted, her body begging for rest. But she could not rest. She could not allow herself to sleep. As night fell on Velora, the planet took on a darker, more menacing tone. Shadows stretched across the ruins, hiding dangers in every corner. Strange noises echoed through the empty streets, creatures scavenging, metal falling, wind whistling through broken structures. Liara's heart raced with every sound. She pressed herself closer to the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible, hoping the darkness would protect her. She thought about her family again. Her parents had always taught her to be brave, to face the world even when it seemed cruel. She remembered her mother's gentle voice, her father's laughter. The memories were painful, but they also gave her strength. Liara knew she could not give up, not now, not ever. She would survive, somehow. Hours passed slowly. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and her wounds burned with pain. She had no food, no water, and no one to help her. The world seemed against her, a cruel place where hope was a distant memory. But then, amidst the silence, she heard a faint sound. It was soft, almost imperceptible, like the hum of a distant machine. She tilted her head, listening carefully. The sound grew louder, steady and rhythmic. It was not the creatures of the night. It was something different, something alive. Her heart leapt with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Could it be another survivor? Someone who could help her? She wanted to call out, but her voice was weak, barely a whisper. She stayed hidden, watching, waiting. From the shadows, a figure appeared. Tall and upright, with skin unlike any Liara had seen. The stranger moved with confidence and purpose. He wore a suit that shone faintly under the light of Valora's twin suns, and his eyes scanned the ruins as if searching for something or someone. Liara held her breath. She had never seen a human before, but somehow she knew he was different. There was something in the way he moved, a sense of kindness that radiated from him even in the midst of destruction. The human approached slowly, his steps careful. He carried a small device in his hand, which emitted a soft light. Liara watched, unsure whether to hide or reach out. Her instincts told her to stay quiet, to remain unseen. But another part of her, a part that had not been destroyed by fear, urged her to trust him. She had no other choice. The human stopped a few meters away, kneeling down and speaking in a gentle, soothing voice. She could not understand the words, but the tone was calm and reassuring. He scanned the area with the device, then looked directly at her. Liara felt her heart skip a beat. She did not know this human, and yet something inside her told her that he meant no harm. With careful steps, he approached her, holding out his hand. Liara hesitated, pain shooting through her legs as she tried to stand. She fell back slightly, but he did not move closer aggressively. Instead, he lowered himself to her level, offering food and water. She eyed the offerings warily, unsure if it was safe. Hunger and thirst battled with fear, and after a long moment, she accepted. The food was strange, but nourishing, and the water cool and refreshing. Liara's body relaxed slightly as she ate and drank, though her mind remained alert. The human watched her carefully, never forcing her to do anything, always patient. Slowly, she began to trust him, realizing that he was not like the others who had abandoned her. He cared. He wanted to help Dot. As the night deepened, the human worked carefully to examine her wounds. He cleaned the cuts and wrapped them with materials that felt both alien and comforting. Liara winced at the pain, but she did not cry. She was used to pain, and she had learned that survival meant enduring it. The human worked quietly, his actions precise and careful, as if he had done this many times before. Finally, after hours of work, he sat back and looked at her. Liara felt a strange warmth in her chest, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. For the first time since the attack, she felt safe. She realized that despite the destruction around her, there was still kindness in the universe. There was still hope. The human spoke again, his voice calm and steady. She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. He was telling her that she was not alone, that she could survive, that he would help her. Liara's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not tears of fear, they were tears of relief. As dawn broke over Valora, the skies painted in shades of gold and violet. Liara sat beside the human, her body weak but her spirit stronger. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time, she believed that she might live to see it. She had been abandoned, wounded, and left for dead, but she had also been found, and in that moment, Liara realized something important. Survival was not just about strength. It was about hope, compassion, and the courage to keep moving forward. Even when the world had turned its back on you, she looked at the human beside her, and though they did not share a common language yet, she felt a connection deeper than words. He was not just a rescuer, he was a symbol of something greater, something she had never imagined. He represented the best of what life could offer: kindness, determination, and the courage to reach out to those who had been forgotten. Liara closed her eyes briefly, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on her face. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. She was still weak, her home still lost, and danger could return at any moment. But she also knew that she was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. With a small but determined smile, Liara whispered to herself once more, "I will survive. I will not give up. I will live." And with that thought, the wounded alien girl, abandoned by all but one, began the first step of her journey toward a new life, a journey that would test her courage, her heart, and her spirit in ways she had never imagined. The first light of dawn painted the sky of Valora in soft shades of pink and gold. The ruins of Liara's home glimmered faintly under the rising suns, though the damage was still evident. Broken buildings, twisted metal, and blackened streets made the planet look more like a battlefield than a place to live. Yet in the midst of destruction, a new presence emerged, a human. Captain Elias Rook stood at the edge of the ruins, scanning the horizon with his visor. His suit was designed for exploration, equipped with life support systems, sensors, and tools to handle almost any environment. Elias had visited hundreds of planets in his lifetime, each one different, each one strange. But Valora was special. It was not only the beauty of the sky or the harshness of the land. It was the life or, in this case, the near absence of it that called to him. He had received a faint life signal earlier in his scans. At first, it had seemed like a glitch after all. Valora had been abandoned by most of its original inhabitants. But the readings persisted. Something or someone was alive, and Elias had built his career on curiosity, on the drive to help and explore, following the signals. He walked cautiously through the ruins. Every step was careful, measured, as he scanned for movement. His eyes caught glimpses of shadows and debris, but nothing moved like a living being should. Still, he pressed on. He had a feeling, a quiet certainty, that he was not alone on this planet, hours passed, and Elias began to think he might be wrong. The life readings had faded, leaving him with only silence and dust. But then, as he crossed a small clearing between two collapsed buildings, he saw her, a small figure, barely moving, hiding behind a broken wall. Liara's bright lavender eyes met his. She was thin, battered, and covered in dirt and dried blood. Her legs trembled as she tried to crawl, and her small hands clutched at the ground for support. Elias immediately recognized the severity of her condition. She was badly wounded and weak. The signs of fear in her eyes were clear, but he also saw a spark of determination. Kneeling carefully a few meters away, Elias spoke in a soft, calm voice. His words were unfamiliar to Liara, yet the tone carried reassurance and safety. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're not alone. I'm here to help." Liara flinched at first, unsure if she could trust this strange creature. She had been abandoned, left for dead, and hurt by those who should have cared for her. But something about the human's voice, the kindness in his eyes, made her hesitate. Slowly, she allowed herself to remain still, watching him. Elias reached into his pack and brought out a small device. It emitted a soft, steady light and a gentle humming sound. He placed it near Liara, and the readings immediately showed the extent of her injuries. Cuts, bruises, dehydration, and exhaustion, all of which could be fatal if left untreated. Elias's face tightened, not with fear, but with determination. He would not allow her to die. Carefully, he approached her, moving slowly to avoid frightening her. "I'm going to help you," he said again. "Trust me." Liara's body was weak, but her mind recognized the sincerity in his words. She had been alone for so long, and the thought of help was both frightening and comforting. She nodded slightly, though she could not speak. Elias understood. He had learned through experience that actions often spoke louder than words, especially when working with a new life form. He offered her water first. Liara eyed the container warily, but her parched throat made her hands reach for it. The cool liquid trickled down her throat, soothing her burning mouth and tired body. She drank slowly, savoring each drop, while Elias watched carefully, making sure she did not choke. Next came food. Elias produced small nutrient packs designed for emergencies, compact, easy to digest, and full of energy. Liara hesitated again but accepted. Her body was so weak that even chewing was difficult, but she managed to eat. Gaining strength with each bite, hours passed as Elias tended to her injuries. He cleaned the cuts with gentle precision, using tools that would minimize pain. Liara flinched at first, but Elias's patience and care allowed her to relax gradually. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she experienced comfort. She was no longer alone. She was no longer helpless. As he worked, Elias spoke to her, not expecting understanding of the words, but hoping the tone would convey reassurance. "You're safe now. You don't have to be afraid. We'll get through this together." His voice was steady, calm, and patient. Liara listened, feeling the warmth of his words even though she could not fully comprehend them. By evening, Liara was able to sit up slightly, supported by Elias, the suns were setting, casting long shadows across the ruins. The planet's natural beauty was still visible through the broken walls and smoke purple, and gold skies reflected in shards of glass and puddles of water. Despite the destruction, there was life, and Liara began to notice it. Small plants sprouted in cracks, insects crawled cautiously through the ruins, and the wind carried the scent of something new and fresh. Liara's mind wandered as she looked at the human. She did not know his name, and she could not understand his words, but she felt a connection. He had rescued her when everyone else had abandoned her. He had shown her kindness when the world had shown cruelty. She wanted to trust him, and slowly, she began to do so. Elias noticed the change in her demeanor. She was still cautious, still wary, but the fear in her eyes had softened. He offered her a blanket, and she accepted, wrapping herself carefully to avoid touching her wounds. For a moment, they sat in silence, two beings from different worlds sharing a fragile bond in the middle of destruction. Night fell on Velora, and the planets and moons rose high into the sky. The light was soft and gentle, casting a glow over the ruins. Elias set up a small shelter using parts of his ship's equipment and debris from the building. It was not much, but it offered protection from the cold and the elements. Liara crawled inside, grateful for the safety. As she rested, her mind replayed the events that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the attack, the screams, the fire, and the chaos. She remembered the feeling of being left behind, abandoned, and forgotten. But now, she also remembered the human kneeling beside her, offering food, water, and hope. For the first time, Liara allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in a long time: hope. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. She was still weak, still wounded, and still far from safety. But she also knew that she had someone who would not abandon her, someone who would fight for her, who would care for her, who would help her survive. The night was quiet, except for the gentle hum of Elias's devices and the faint sounds of the planet's wildlife. Liara drifted into a restless sleep, her small body finally able to rest. She dreamed of her family, of the life she had lost, and of a future she could not yet imagine. But in her dreams, there was also the human, guiding her, protecting her, and showing her that even in a cruel universe, kindness could exist. When she awoke, the sun had risen again, casting its light over the ruins. Elias was already moving, preparing the area for travel. Liara watched him, fascinated by his movements. Humans were different from her people, taller, stronger, and yet gentle. He seemed to combine strength with care, bravery with patience. She had never seen such a combination, and she felt both admiration and curiosity. Elias noticed her gaze and smiled gently. He spoke, and though she did not understand the words, the meaning was clear. "We need to move. It's not safe here for you alone." Liara nodded, trusting him. She did not fully understand why, but she knew that following him was the right choice. Together, they left the ruins. Elias carried her for part of the journey, setting her down when she could walk short distances. She clung to him, not out of fear, but out of trust. She felt the strength of his hands, the calmness of his presence, and the reassurance that she would not be left behind again. The journey through the ruins was slow and careful. Elias scanned for danger, and Liara observed everything around her. She noticed the beauty of Velora, even in its broken state. The sky, the wind, the distant mountains all reminded her that the world was still alive, that there was still hope beyond the destruction. By midday, they reached a small clearing, and Elias set up a temporary camp. He cleaned her wounds again, checked her vitals, and provided more food and water. Liara ate slowly, gaining strength with each bite. She realized that she was beginning to recover, not just physically, but mentally. The fear and despair that had haunted her were slowly being replaced by trust and hope. As the sun set again, Liara sat beside the human, watching the skies change colors. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she believed that she might survive and perhaps even thrive. For the first time since the attack, Liara felt safe, and she knew, deep in her heart, that her life had changed forever. She had been abandoned and left to die, but now she had been found. The small clearing where Liara and Elias had set up camp was quiet in the morning light. The twin suns of Velor rose slowly, painting the landscape with shades of gold and violet. Birds, small, strange creatures with translucent wings, flitted between the trees, singing soft, unfamiliar songs. Liara watched them with wide eyes, her body still weak but her mind starting to awaken with curiosity. Elias moved around the camp efficiently, checking their surroundings, gathering supplies, and preparing a simple breakfast. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic, showing the discipline of a human trained for survival and exploration. Liara observed them silently, fascinated. Humans, she thought, were so different from her own species. Yet there was something about Elias that felt comforting, safe, and steady. After a moment of hesitation, Liara crawled closer to Elias. Her wounds were healing slowly, but she still needed help. Elias noticed her approach and smiled gently. "Good morning," he said softly. Liara did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. It was kind, welcoming, and patient to everything she had lacked for so long. Elias handed her a small piece of fruit, one that she had never seen before. Its color was bright and its texture soft. Liara examined it carefully, then took a small bite. Sweet juices filled her mouth, and for the first time in days, she smiled. Elias watched her, pleased. He knew that small victories like this food, hydration, comforts were essential for someone as weakened as Liara. Once she had eaten, Elias moved to tend her wounds again. He worked slowly, speaking to her in calm tones. Liara flinched at first, but she allowed him to clean and dress the cuts. Each careful movement, each gentle word, built her trust. She realized that Elias was not just helping her because he wanted to. She had never encountered such selfless care before. As the morning passed, Elias began to explain using gestures, simple drawings, and repeated words who he was and why he had come to Velora. Liara listened, fascinated. She did not understand every word, but the meaning was clear. He was a human explorer, traveling through the stars, seeking knowledge and helping those in need. His people, unlike her attackers, were compassionate, curious, and determined to do what was right. Liara felt a strange mixture of emotions. She was amazed by the human's abilities, his knowledge, and his care. She felt relief that someone had come for her, but she also felt curiosity. How could humans travel so far, survive in so many dangerous places, and still care for others? Her own people, she thought, had abandoned her. Humans, it seemed, were different. For the next several hours, Elias continued to help her regain strength. He guided her as she attempted to stand, supporting her trembling legs. Liara fell several times, but each time Elias encouraged her, lifting her gently and guiding her forward. With each small step, she grew stronger, and with each success, her confidence grew. As they worked together, Elias also began to learn about Liara. Through gestures, drawings, and simple words, she told him about her home, her family, and the attack that had left her alone. Her voice was soft, almost broken, but Elias listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. He learned of the culture of her people, their songs, their stories, their ways of thinking. He marveled at the differences and the similarities. Despite being from different worlds, their hearts shared something in common, a desire for safety, for hope, and for connection. Liara found herself opening up in ways she had not since the attack. She asked questions about Elias, about humans, about the worlds he had seen. His answers were patient and thorough, though simple enough for her to understand. She learned that humans travel across the stars, that they explored strange planets, and that they often helped beings who were in danger. The more she listened, the more she realized that she had never truly known kindness before Elias. Days passed, and Liara's body grew stronger. Her wounds healed, her strength returned, and her fear slowly began to fade. She started to walk short distances on her own, exploring the area around the camp. Elias followed her closely, never leaving her side, ready to protect her if danger appeared. The bond between them grew with each passing day, a bond of trust, respect, and mutual understanding. One evening, as the twin suns set, Elias showed Liara a star map. It was a device that displayed the planets, stars, and galaxies in intricate detail. Liara gazed at it in awe, her mind filled with wonder. She had never seen anything like it. "Where is my planet?" she asked softly, pointing to Velora on the map. Elias nodded, showing her its location and explaining as best he could where they were in the galaxy. Liara's heart ached with memories of her home, but she also felt hope. She realized that she had a chance to rebuild her life, to survive, and maybe even to thrive. With Elias's help, she could explore, learn, and grow. She was no longer abandoned. She had been found. Over time, Elias also taught her simple skills to help her survive. He showed her how to find safe water, how to use basic tools, and how to identify edible plants. Liara was a quick learner, eager to absorb every piece of knowledge he offered. She realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about understanding the world, using one's mind, and trusting those who cared for you, despite their progress. Danger still lingered on Velora. The hostile aliens who had attacked her home might return. Elias explained this carefully, showing her how to stay alert and be cautious. Liara listened attentively, realizing that even though she was healing, the world was still unpredictable. She had to remain strong, smart, and brave. As the nights passed, Liara began to dream again. Her dreams were no longer filled solely with fear and despair. Instead, they held visions of hope, of flying through the skies, of exploring new worlds, and of walking alongside Elias as they traveled together. In her dreams, she could feel her strength returning, her courage growing. She was no longer the abandoned girl who had crawled through the ruins. She was becoming someone new, someone capable of facing the universe. Elias watched her closely during these days. He could see the changes in her, the growing strength and confidence. He also saw the curiosity and intelligence in her eyes, qualities that reminded him why humans had always strived to explore the unknown. Liara, though young and from a completely different world, shared that same spark of ingenuity and determination. She was, in many ways, a mirror of the best qualities humans value most. One morning, Liara approached Elias with a question. She pointed to the stars above, shimmering faintly as the suns rose, and asked what lay beyond them. Elias smiled, realizing that she was beginning to dream of more than survival. He explained, in simple words, about distant worlds, other civilizations, and the endless possibilities of the galaxy. Liara's eyes shone with excitement. She wanted to see it all, to learn, to explore. Elias nodded, impressed by her curiosity. "One day," he said gently, "we will explore many worlds together. But first, you must be strong. The universe is beautiful, but it can be dangerous too." Liara listened carefully, understanding the balance between wonder and caution. She was ready to learn, ready to grow, ready to face whatever came next. Their days settled into a rhythm of healing, learning, and exploration. Liara's trust in Elias deepened with every action he took, every lesson he taught, and every moment he spent caring for her. She realized that humans, despite their differences, could be compassionate, intelligent, and brave. She also realized that she could be more than just a survivor. She could be a partner, a learner, and a friend. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the clearing, Liara found a small flower growing among the ruins. Its petals were bright and delicate, defying the harshness of the world around it. She picked it carefully and showed it to Elias. He smiled, understanding the symbolism. Even in a world destroyed by violence, life could endure. Even in despair, hope could bloom. Liara clutched the flower, feeling a sense of purpose she had not known before. She was no longer just a wounded, abandoned girl. She was someone with strength, intelligence, and courage. And she had someone who believed in her, someone who would stand beside her no matter what. As the twin suns set that evening, Liara and Elias sat together, watching the colors of the sky change. She felt a sense of peace she had not known since the attack. She was healing not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. She was learning about the universe, about trust, and about herself. and she was beginning to believe that she had a future worth fighting for. Liara whispered softly to herself, as if speaking to the universe itself, "I am not alone. I am strong. I will survive, and I will see the stars." With that promise, the alien girl, once abandoned and wounded, continued her journey of healing and understanding. She had been found by a human, and together, they were building a bond that would carry them both into the challenges and wonders of the galaxy. The mornings on Velora had grown calm, almost peaceful. Liara walked beside Elias, her steps more confident now, her wounds healed and her strength returning. The twin suns of the planet painted the skies with hues of pink and violet, and the gentle breeze carried the faint scent of flowers growing amidst the ruins. For a moment, it seemed as if the world had finally given them a chance to breathe. But peace, Elias knew, was often temporary. His scanners had detected unusual signals over the last few cycles' rapid movements, distant energy readings, and faint life signatures. Something was approaching, something familiar yet threatening. He studied the readings carefully, analyzing the risk. The hostile aliens who had attacked Liara's home were not gone. They had only retreated, leaving destruction behind. Elias turned to Liara, his face serious but calm. "We may not be safe for long," he said, his voice steady. Liara understood the tone, even if she did not comprehend the words fully. She had seen danger before, and instinctively, she knew he was warning her. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were determined. She had grown stronger. She would not hide this time. By midday, the first signs of the attackers appeared. Shadows moved across the hills beyond the clearing, and strange shapes glinted in the sunlight. The hostile aliens had tracked Liara's energy signature, determined to finish what they had started. Their ships were unlike anything Elias had ever seen, sleek, fast, and armed with weapons designed for precise destruction. Elias quickly gathered their supplies, preparing for the confrontation. Liara watched him, fascinated and alert. She could feel the tension in the air, but she did not panic. The lessons he had taught her, the skills she had learned, had prepared her for moments like this. She knew she could help. She had to. The attackers' ships descended from the sky with a low hum, their engines cutting through the silence of the clearing. They landed carefully, almost gracefully, as if the aliens were as comfortable on the ground as they were in the air. Liara felt a surge of fear, but she pushed it aside. She would not let them intimidate her. Not anymore. Elias positioned himself between Liara and the attackers. His suit activated protective shields and scanning devices, while his eyes studied the movements of the enemy. "Stay close," he said. Liara nodded, gripping his arm for support. The bond they had formed over the last few cycles was stronger than ever, and she trusted him completely. The hostile aliens stepped out of their ships, their armor dark and sharp, their eyes cold and calculating. They had no compassion, no mercy, only the drive to destroy. One of them pointed at Liara, speaking in a harsh, guttural language. Elias did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They wanted her gone. Liara's heart raced, but she remembered the training Elias had given her. She moved with caution, hiding behind debris while observing the attackers' movements. She realized that her knowledge of her home world, combined with the skills Elias had taught her, could make a difference. She could help them escape or even outsmart their enemies. Elias raised his hands, signaling a calm stance, but his eyes were sharp, scanning for weakness. The hostile aliens advanced, testing his defenses. Small energy blasts shot from their weapons, embedding in the ground near Elias and Liara. The human moved swiftly, using shields and evasive maneuvers to protect them both. Liara watched, learning from his actions, studying his movements for patterns she could use. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the clearing. One of the attackers had tried to flank them, moving through the broken ruins with silent steps. Liara reacted instinctively, using a small piece of debris to block their path. The alien stumbled, giving Elias the chance to counter with precision and drive it back. Liara's heart pounded with adrenaline. She had never fought before, but she realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. She joined Elias in creating obstacles, using her knowledge of the terrain to anticipate the attackers' moves. Her small size and agility gave her an advantage in navigating the ruins, and together, she and Elias became a team. Hours passed in tense confrontation. The attackers were relentless, but Elias and Liara's combined skills allowed them to stay ahead. Liara discovered that she could move silently, predict the enemy's actions, and even create distractions that gave Elias the upper hand. Each successful maneuver built her confidence and trust in herself. She realized that she was not just a survivor. She was becoming a fighter, a strategist, and a partner. The tide began to turn when Liara spotted a narrow canyon near the clearing. She pointed to it, gesturing urgently. Elias understood immediately. "We can use that," he said, nodding. Carefully, they lured the attackers toward the canyon, using themselves as bait while creating traps along the path. Liara's knowledge of her planet's terrain became invaluable. She led them through hidden paths, down steep slopes, and around jagged rocks, keeping just out of reach of the attackers' weapons. Finally, they reached the canyon's edge. Elias activated a device that sent a powerful energy pulse into the narrow space, disorienting the attackers and forcing them to retreat. The hostile aliens, unable to pursue without risking their own destruction, began to withdraw. Liara watched them go, her chest heaving with relief and triumph. She had survived the attack, not alone, but with a partner she trusted completely. When the danger had passed, Elias turned to Liara, his face calm but proud. "You did well," he said softly. Liara did not fully understand the words, but she felt their meaning. He had acknowledged her bravery, her intelligence, and her determination. For the first time, she felt truly seen not as a wounded, abandoned girl, but as someone capable, strong, and valuable. Liara smiled faintly, a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She realized that she had changed. The fear that had once consumed her was now tempered by courage. The loneliness that had haunted her was now replaced by trust. She had learned that strength was not only physical, it was mental, emotional. And born from the bond she shared with Elias. Elias helped her back to their temporary camp. He tended to her minor scrapes and ensured she had food and water. Liara ate slowly, savoring each bite. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, the coolness of the evening breeze, and the reassuring presence of her human companion. She had survived the attack, yes, but more importantly, she had learned something vital. Together, they were stronger than any threat. As night fell on Valora, the twin moons rose, casting a soft silver light over the ruins. Liara sat beside Elias, her body tired but her mind sharp. She looked at the stars above and felt a sense of wonder and determination. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but she now knew she could face them. Not alone, but with a friend, a teacher, and a protector. Elias watched the sky as well, noting the constellations, calculating the best path forward. He did not speak, but Liara understood the message. The universe was big, but they had each other. That bond, forged in danger and trust, was stronger than any weapon, faster than any ship, and more enduring than any challenge. Liara closed her eyes, reflecting on the day's events. She had faced fear, confronted danger, and discovered her own strength. She had been abandoned, wounded, and left for dead, but she had also been found. And now, she was learning that survival was not just about staying alive. It was about courage, wisdom, and connection. The night was quiet except for the distant hum of alien creatures and the faint crackle of Valora's wind. Liara rested her head on her arms, feeling safe for the first time since the attack. She whispered softly to herself, a promise and a declaration. "I will survive. I will be strong. I will not run. And I will protect what I love." Elias glanced at her, seeing the determination in her eyes even as she slept. He knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, more dangers, more unknowns, but he also knew that Liara was ready. She had faced despair and emerged stronger. She had learned trust, courage, and resilience. And together, they would face whatever the galaxy could throw at them. The threat that had returned that day would not define them. Instead, it had shown them the power of teamwork, the strength of compassion. and the courage that comes from not giving up. Liara was no longer the abandoned girl from the ruins. She was a survivor, a learner, and a fighter. As the twin moons of Velora cast their light across the landscape, Elias and Liara prepared for the journey ahead. The universe was vast, full of mysteries, dangers, and opportunities. But one thing was certain: they would face it together, stronger and wiser than ever. Liara looked up at the stars once more and whispered, "The universe is big, but I am ready, and I am not alone." And in that quiet moment, a bond between human and alien grew stronger than ever, a bond that would carry them into the challenges and wonders that lay ahead. The morning sun rose gently over Velora, painting the ruins with soft shades of gold and violet. The destruction that once dominated the landscape now seemed less frightening, softened by light and the promise of a new day. Liara walked beside Elias, her steps confident and steady. She no longer felt like the fragile, abandoned girl who had crawled through the broken streets weeks before. She was stronger now, her spirit rebuilt alongside her body. Their temporary camp had become a small place of learning and safety. Elias had helped Liara build simple shelters, store food, and collect clean water. Every day, she learned something new about the land, about survival, and about herself. And every day, her trust in Elias deepened. She no longer saw him just as a rescuer. He was her companion, her teacher, and her friend. Liara's recovery was not only physical. She had begun to understand the importance of knowledge, patience, and hope. She practiced using small tools, learning to navigate the terrain, and observing the patterns of the local wildlife. Each discovery filled her with wonder. Even the smallest things, a flower blooming amidst the ruins, a bird singing in the distance, reminded her that life persisted. Even in places touched by destruction, Elias noticed the change in her. "You are learning quickly," he said one morning, his voice calm but proud. Liara smiled faintly, understanding the meaning behind the words. She had grown, and she knew it. She had survived the attacks, learned to navigate a dangerous planet, and begun to see hope where there had been none. Their days were filled with exploration and preparation. Liara and Elias moved through the ruins, collecting supplies and mapping the area. Elias taught her how to recognize signs of danger, how to use simple tools to protect themselves, and how to think strategically in unpredictable situations. Liara soaked up the knowledge like a sponge, eager to understand everything about this new world. One afternoon, as they walked through a narrow canyon near the clearing, Liara spotted a small group of alien creatures struggling to move across broken terrain. They were frightened, timid, and weak, much like Liara had been when she was first found. Without hesitation, she moved to help them, guided by the lessons Elias had taught her about compassion and courage. Elias watched her carefully, impressed by her initiative. Liara had learned that survival was not just about protecting oneself. It was also about helping others, building connections, and making the universe a little brighter for those in need. Together, they guided the creatures to safety, creating a small but meaningful bond. Over time, Liara began to teach the creatures small survival skills she had learned from Elias. She showed them where to find water, how to avoid dangerous areas, and how to navigate the broken terrain. She felt a sense of pride and purpose she had never experienced before. Helping others gave her strength, and she realized that her life had meaning beyond survival alone. As the days passed, Elias introduced her to new technologies and concepts. He showed her star maps, navigational tools, and even simple communication devices. Liara was fascinated. She had never imagined that the universe could be so vast, that there were so many worlds beyond her own. Her curiosity grew with each lesson, and she began to dream not just of surviving, but of exploring, learning, and discovering. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Liara and Elias sat together on a high ridge overlooking the ruins. The light of the moon shimmered across the landscape, casting shadows that danced with the wind. Liara felt a deep sense of peace. The fear that had once consumed her was gone, replaced by confidence, curiosity, and hope. Elias spoke softly, explaining the concept of future possibilities. "The universe is big," he said, "full of challenges, but also full of chances to grow and learn. You have survived one world, Liara. There are many more ahead, and I will be here to help you navigate them. Liara listened carefully, understanding not only his words but the meaning behind them. She was ready to embrace the future, no matter what it held. Liara's transformation was not unnoticed. Other survivors, humans and aliens alike, began to hear of the young alien girl who had been abandoned, but found courage and strength. Her story spread, inspiring others who had faced despair. Liara became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of compassion. She had been alone, wounded, and left for dead, yet she had risen stronger than ever, guided by kindness and determination. One day, as they explored a distant part of the ruins, Liara discovered remnants of her home, small mementos left behind, pieces of culture and history that had survived the attack. She picked them up carefully, studying each one. Elias watched silently, allowing her to process her emotions. The discoveries were bittersweet. They reminded her of the pain and loss she had endured, but they also showed her that fragments of her world still survived. Liara held the mementos close, feeling a sense of connection to her past. She realized that her journey was not just about escaping danger, it was about rebuilding, learning, and preserving what mattered. She could honor her past while creating a future full of hope. With Elias's guidance, Liara began to think about long-term survival and rebuilding. They explored nearby caves, mapped safe routes, and even began planting small gardens to ensure a sustainable food supply. Every step was careful, measured, and deliberate. Liara felt a sense of accomplishment with each success. She was no longer the helpless girl who had crawled through ruins. She was a leader, a learner, and a protector. The nights were calm, filled with quiet reflection. Liara would sit beside Elias, gazing at the stars and dreaming of the world she might one day visit. She imagined traveling beyond Velora, meeting new species, and learning about the mysteries of the galaxy. Her dreams were no longer limited by fear, they were fueled by curiosity, courage, and hope. Elias observed her closely, noting the changes. Liara had grown in strength, intelligence, and spirit. She had learned to trust, to act with courage, and to find joy even amidst challenges. He felt a deep sense of pride. She was no longer a child who had needed saving, she was a young survivor, ready to face the universe with resilience and determination. Liara's bond with Elias became a partnership. They made decisions together, shared discoveries, and faced challenges as a team. She learned that strength was not just about physical ability, it was also about trust, understanding, and working together. Elias taught her that every life had value, every action could make a difference, and every choice mattered. One morning, as they prepared to explore a distant ridge, Liara turned to Elias and spoke a word she had learned from him. Together. She repeated it several times, each time with more confidence. Elias smiled, understanding the meaning. They would face the galaxy together, side by side, as companions and friends. The days on Velora continued in a rhythm of learning, exploration, and growth. Liara and Elias discovered new areas, found hidden resources, and even encountered other survivors. Each encounter taught Liara more about the universe, about life, and about herself. She began to understand that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about building connections, sharing knowledge, and creating hope. Eventually, Liara realized that she was ready to leave the ruins and explore the wider world with Elias. The planet had been both her prison and her teacher. It had tested her strength, courage, and spirit. And now, with Elias by her side, she was ready to take the next step. As they prepared to depart, Liara looked back at the ruins that had been her home and her battlefield. She felt a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. The ruins reminded her of what she had lost, but they also reminded her of what she had gained: strength, courage. In the bond with Elias, she would carry these lessons with her as she ventured into the unknown. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, signaling that they were ready to move. Liara nodded, feeling a sense of excitement and determination. She had survived despair, danger, and loss. She had been abandoned, wounded, and left for dead. And now, she was ready to embrace life fully, to explore the galaxy. and to discover the wonders that awaited her. As their ship lifted off from the clearing, Liara gazed out at the planet below. The ruins were no longer a place of fear, they were a place of memory, growth, and survival. She whispered softly to herself, I am alive. I am strong. I will explore. I will learn, and I will thrive. Elias glanced at her, smiling. He knew that the young alien girl who had been abandoned and wounded had become something extraordinary, a survivor, a learner, and a true companion. Together, they would journey through the galaxy, facing challenges, discovering wonders, and forging a future full of hope. Liara leaned back, feeling the hum of the ship beneath her and the steady presence of Elias beside her. She was no longer alone. She had been found, healed, and strengthened. And in that moment, she understood something vital. The universe was vast, but with courage, trust, and companionship, anything was possible. As the stars stretched out before them, Liara smiled. She had survived the impossible, learned from her pain, and embraced the strength within her. And now, the galaxy awaited. Together, human and alien looked forward to a new beginning, a life filled with hope, adventure, and endless possibilities.